Hey everyone, my name is Peter. I am a developer relations engineer on the Firebase team. Today, we will explore function calling. I will first explain what it is, and then we'll look at how to use it in your AI-powered apps on iOS using the Firebase AI Logic SDK. My team and I have been working on an AI-powered meal planning app called Friendly Meals. In this part of the app here, users can have a conversation with the app and ask it to recommend a recipe based on their input. Using a conversational UI is a great way to give users more control. For example, they could ask the app to provide a version of the recipe that takes less time. Great for all of us who are always pressed for time. Once the app has suggested an inspiring recipe, the user might actually want to try it out. Thanks to the conversational nature of the chat interface, the app can walk the user through preparing the recipe, which is really cool. Now, many recipes require the person cooking to keep time. So we thought, wouldn't it be cool if the AI could track the time for the user? That sounds like a great idea, if only there wasn't a tiny problem. You know, generative models are great at solving many types of problems, but they are constrained by a number of limitations. For example, they are frozen after training, which leads to stale data. Also, and this is the real issue in our case, they cannot query or modify data. You see, for keeping track of the time for the user, the model would have to be able to call a local API to start a timer on the user's device. Thankfully, there is a solution to this problem: function calling. Function calling is sometimes referred to as tool use because it allows a model to use external tools such as APIs and local functions to generate its final response. Here is how it works. When you send a request to the model, you can also provide the model with a set of tools, like functions, that it can use to generate its final response. In order for the model to be able to use these tools, the model and your app need to pass information back and forth to each other. This is why using the Chat API is a recommended way to implement function calling. Let's take a look at how we can implement a timer for our meal planning app. To implement function calling with Firebase AI Logic, we have to follow these steps. First, we need to implement the function. In our case, that's a function that starts a local timer. Second, we need to create a function declaration that helps the model understand what the function can do. Third, tell the model that the function exists. Fourth, when the model realizes it needs to use the function to answer the user's request, it will ask the app to call the function. And fifth, return the function's result back to the model so that the model can generate its response. Let's first create a function to start a timer. This can be any function you might also call from other parts of your app, for example, when the user taps a button. The start timer function has one parameter, so we can pass in the number of minutes we want the timer to run. It will then schedule a timer that counts down the time. This closure here will be called on every time interval, so we can check if the timer is up and play sound, for example. We're keeping the remaining time in a property that we can later read using another function to help the model find out how much longer the timer will be running. To make the model aware of the start timer function, we need to register it with the model. But first, we need to describe the function to the model using a function declaration. A function declaration consists of the name of the function, a description of what it does, and a list of parameters that the function expects. Using good names and providing meaningful descriptions is key for helping the model understand if and how it can use the functions you provide to it. Using the tools parameter, we can now register the start timer function as a tool. You can register one or many tools when you set up the model. To achieve best results, make sure to follow the best practices for function calling. For example, Be extremely clear and specific in your descriptions. The model relies on your descriptions to choose the correct function and provide appropriate arguments. Use descriptive function names. No spaces, no periods or dashes. Use specific types for parameters. This helps to reduce errors. Also, keep in mind that while the model can use an arbitrary number of tools, providing too many can increase the risk of selecting an incorrect or suboptimal tool. Choose only the relevant tools and keep the active set of tools to a maximum of 10 to 20. It also helps to provide context in your prompt. For example, you are a helpful kitchen chef who keeps the time. And finally, use a low temperature, no pun intended, for more deterministic and reliable function calls. A temperature of 0 works well. Very important, if a function call has significant consequences, such as placing an order, you should ask the user to confirm the call before executing it. For more best practices, check out the function calling best practices in our documentation. I'll put a link in the description. When the model determines that calling your provided function would actually help it to provide a better answer to the user, your app needs to make a call to the function and return the result to the model. In our case, the user might say, "Please start a timer for 3 minutes." To handle any tool calling requests from the model, check the function calls property on the response object. It contains a list of function calls the model wants to make to provide the best possible answer to the user. First, check if the name of the call matches the name of the function you registered. Then, extract any arguments from the call and convert them to local data types. You're now ready to call your function. Once your function call returns, pass any result values on to the model. You do this by creating a function response part that has the same name as the function call. In our case, starting the timer doesn't yield any return value, so we'll just return an empty dictionary. Repeat this process for all function calls and collect all function responses in an array of function response parts. And finally, call chat.sendMessage and pass the function responses using the function role. You can think of this as your app being a third partner in the conversation between the model and the user. Wait for the model's response, and then display it accordingly. Let's give this a try. I'll ask the app for instructions to prepare poached eggs. Depending on how runny I would like my egg yolks to be, I should set a timer for 3 or 4 minutes. I like my poached eggs to be runny, so I'll ask for a timer for 3 minutes. And now I can see that my timer is running for 3 minutes. Nice. Let's add another function that returns the remaining time so users can ask the AI how much time is left. Just like before, we first implement the function itself. It returns the remaining time in seconds. Then we define a function declaration, providing the name and a description. Notice that this function doesn't accept any parameters, so we will provide an empty dictionary. Make sure to register the function during model initialization. We'll also need to handle the function call itself. When the model requests to call the getRemainingTime function, we need to return the result as a JSON object. If there is a timer running, we'll return the remaining time in seconds as a double. If no timer is running, we return a status message to indicate this to the model. Finally, let's add the function call response to the function responses object. And that's it. When I run the app again, I can ask if a timer is running, and the response should obviously be no. After starting a timer, I can ask again, and the app will tell me the remaining time in seconds. And there you have it. You now know how to use function calling in your iOS apps with the Firebase AI Logic SDK. You can use this to give the AI features in your apps hands and eyes, if you will. But keep in mind, with great powers come great responsibilities. When a function call has significant consequences, for example, putting in an order for missing ingredients, you should always get confirmation from the user. Also keep in mind that the model might request to call your function or other functions several times. This might happen if the provided data isn't sufficient to answer the user's request. Function calling is an exciting feature, and we would love to hear what you built with it. Feel free to leave a comment below to tell us. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.